What exactly is a pricing software, and do you even need one? And how to use it if you do? This video has been long awaited. Multiple years you've asked in the comments for a review on pricing softwares, and finally, let me bring it to you. My expert opinion with over 100 Airbnb properties and my long journey in pricing strategy, I will teach you what you need to know about pricing software in this video. Let's jump in. Hey, welcome back Airbnb family. So this year we are going to start talking about a lot of stuff that you want to talk about. Channel managers, pricing software, going multi-platform, different technologies that can enable you to run your property better, because you need to stay competitive in 2022. And one of the biggest parts of driving profit in an Airbnb property or short-term rental is driving revenue. The more cash you can pump into your property, the more profit you can keep, right? If you make $0 per month, it's kind of hard to make any profit, don't you think? So pricing software is pretty interesting, but there's a lot of myths about pricing softwares, and it leaves people with an incomplete solution and can sometimes even hinder you if you don't know what you're doing. So first off, a pricing software is an algorithm that will look at things like supply and demand. It'll look at like how many days you have left before before you can no longer get a booking. It'll look at like peak days, like holidays and stuff like that. And it will recommend that you change your price based on that information. It can also automate it for you for a fee. Almost every single pricing software that's out there will let you plug into them for free and look at their data and their insights for free. But if you want it to be automated, it'll cost you money. Now, this is the part where we have to ask ourselves, well, do we really need to pay for it? Is it really worth the squeeze? If you've paid any attention to my pricing videos, you'll notice that the stuff that they do for you, or the stuff that they factor in, like seasonality, whether it's a weekend, weekday, supply and demand, lead time, which is how many days into the future the day is, all that stuff is stuff that we talk about in the free pricing strategy videos in this YouTube channel. Now, they look at that stuff and they quantify it into a number, and they can spit out a number for you. So what's great about this is if you understand pricing strategy, understand dynamic pricing, and know why prices need to change in order to hit 100% occupancy, then you're already on board for this. And take your pick. You could use Wheelhouse, Price Labs, Beyond Pricing, and there are other softwares out there like Beyond. Actually, Beyond is Beyond Pricing, but they changed their name to Beyond actually recently. So you can use any of these softwares and they will give you a different interpretation of the same concept, which is dynamic pricing based on these principles. Now, I personally use Wheelhouse as my point of reference for stuff like this if I ever need a second opinion. Now, a lot of you know that I have over 100 properties and I've been managing my own prices for a long time. I've always done it manually. I don't even automate it. Now, this is the part where we get into the should you automate your prices. The three softwares have different costs for that service, the automation. And they have some upper tier level analytics too that they can sell you as well, which is kind of fun. But we won't get into that yet. We need to do a deeper dive into each software and what they do in order to talk about, say what Beyond gives you, or what Price Labs gives you, or what Wheelhouse gives you for the money. But when we talk about just price automation, which is the first level of service that some people, they want, looking at their different pricing structures is important. One offers a flat rate per listing. Now, a flat rate per listing is great for big, expensive properties, right? So other ones, they'll charge 1%, or Wheelhouse, if you have 10 or more listings, they'll charge 0.7%, right? 0.7%. So with apartments, small properties that make little individual revenue, something like Wheelhouse that charges under 1% of your revenue becomes perhaps a more attractive option. Where if you have larger properties that, can make $15,000 or $25,000 a month, then one that only charges you, say, $20 per listing per month becomes more attractive, because sharing, say, 1% of $25,000 becomes rather expensive just to automate your pricing strategy. So I would say with bigger properties, go with the flat rate one if you're going to pay to automate. At this point in my, you could call it a career as a business owner in the Airbnb space, I am starting to see the value of pricing automation, but there are some drawbacks. I teach how to use rule sets as a key portion of my pricing strategy. I also teach you to overcharge as a key approach to my pricing strategy. Now, this will affect how your pricing software spit out your data. We want to overcharge 30-35% over market. That way, people, when they go to book a one-night stay, would have to pay a huge premium, because we don't believe in making a 2-day minimum or 3-day minimum our thing, which you still could do. But if you follow my pricing strategy all the way, which also goes in line with SEO optimization, we allow one-night stays, but like at an extremely high cost, and we use 2, 3, 4, and 5-day discounts baked into Airbnb's profile in order to then drop prices for multi-day stays, whatever it is that you really want your minimum truly to be. And those 20% off for a 3-day stay may seem generous, but it's only because we overcharged, and thus we're bringing it back down to a normal price. So with these, we start to use things called rule sets, where rule sets will take away that 3-day discount if we start to discount the property even more. And I teach this all in my premium course. This isn't something that I teach for free. It's actually pretty proprietary, but you need to understand that rule sets are something that we do use a lot, and overcharging is something that we use a lot. So it affects my review of this video. When we drop our prices on a property, let's say we make our rate $150, and we really want to sell it for 110 or 120. Well, the moment that we drop that down to 100, we no longer want to give a weekly or monthly discount because we're already at that rate. So we use a rule set to remove the length of stay discounts. Now, this will create a slight disconnect with a pricing software if you automate it. If you have Wheelhouse or Price Labs or Beyond Pricing automate these changes for you, they will change the price from 150 down to 100 for you, but they can't go into Airbnb and then add a rule set, right? So you'll still have to manually go in and add a rule set if you do something like that. If you don't have length of stay discounts built in, like even weekly or monthly, then this type of implication no longer becomes a concern to you. But if you do use length of stay discounts, this disconnect, this two-step thing will be of concern. And what'll happen is some listings might have a price change and you didn't catch it. And so you won't know where Price Labs or Wheelhouse or Beyond Pricing, you won't know where they went in and changed what exact prices. You may not be able to track that. So doing everything manually allows you to drop a price for a reason and then add a rule set that fits for a reason. So that is one side of it. Now, when you overprice, this also changes the way that any of these softwares spit data at you. So for example, Wheelhouse will take your base rate. They'll have this rate that you put in and say, this is going to be my nightly rate. And Wheelhouse will then suggest that you increase it or suggest that you decrease it, and they can automate it to increase or decrease, but as a deviation from your base prices. So what they're doing is they are assuming that whatever your base price is going to be an optimal rate. And from your optimal rate, they will then suggest that you increase your price or decrease your price by a percentage or by a fixed dollar amount based on different factors. So if there's an event, they might say, hey, you should raise your rates by $120 this night because there's an event. Now, if your optimal price is already baked in to be $50 or $60 more expensive, then you would actually only want to raise it $70, right? If the listing says, hey, you want to drop your rate $80 from your $200 price because last minute discounts and all this stuff in supply and demand and seasonality, we think that your rate should be $80 less than optimal, and your rate is listed at 200, but you're secretly trying to get booked at 130. Well then, if you went and changed your price to a no discounts price, you'd have to take $80 off of 130 to get your change from optimal. The same thing would be done with percentages. If they say drop your rate by 20%, instead of using that overinflated price that we discussed, you'd actually take your optimal, like what am I actually trying to get on a 3-day stay, and then you would take that rate and give 30% off or 20% off of that based on Wheelhouse or Price Labs suggestions. So I know this gets a little sticky, but Wheelhouse, for example, and this is what you need to know, will deviate from whatever price you tell it to start tracking from, and they will assume that that's a good price. It won't understand that you are actually overcharging on you. So you'll take the discounts or increases and just retrofit it to the price that you're actually hoping to collect and deviate from your true price instead of the one that Wheelhouse is. Now, what are the pros of automating your prices? Now, at my size, it begins to be a really big deal in some ways. Even with these conflicts where I can't run my perfect manual pricing strategy if I automate, there are some properties that we have automated because we cannot afford to make mistakes. Let's say you go to change your prices and you've got a property that is a $650 a night property, and you go to change it to $380, and then you accidentally make it $38, right? That kind of the clerical error can be super expensive. Or if you got a property that's 140 and you want to make it 110 and then you make it 1,110 or something like that, it won't get booked and you may not catch it. Those types of little menial mistakes can add up to a lot of trouble. In addition, you may not change prices because you miss a day or miss 2 days, or you get busy and you forget. And I went and traveled the world for a while, and it was really hard for me to go in and change prices. There's a solid 3 weeks that I said, you know what, I'm just gonna drop the ball and not change prices and see how my baseline prices work without dynamically dropping them. And we went from a 92% occupancy down to a 68% occupancy by not dynamically changing prices. That is a 20+% change. And that's a huge change because that's a lot of your profit. If you break even at say 40% occupancy or 45% occupancy, then the difference between 45 and 90 is like all of your profit as opposed to 45 and say 65. So automating can make sure that you do the little things correctly every single day. And at scale with 100 or so properties, those start to add up. So now, if you include the fact that they will raise your rates for you when there's an event, which is something that a lot of people can miss, especially if you're multi-city. See, if we're in Dallas and Philadelphia and Houston and other places, and how we change prices should deviate from each one, but a lot of times people who manage prices manually will kind of get into a flow and they won't discriminate between a Dallas property and a Philadelphia property. They'll just go, they'll click a whole box in Airbnb, go, let's drop all these prices, all at the same time to the same amount. And that's inefficient. You're actually cutting a corner to save you time. And you're not actually getting a true price out of that change that you just made. So that kind of laziness can actually cost your business money. So between that kind of laziness and the inability to catch all the times that you should spike your prices, which was really the point that I was getting at initially, that increase in price from their predictive AI saying, hey, you should raise your rates for this holiday or for this event that's not a holiday that you didn't know about, well, those will make you more money. And now paying your $20 a month per listing or your 0.7% per listing can get paid for by the increased efficiency of their systems. Now, I will tell you, people who have absolutely no clue what pricing is, they plug into something like Wheelhouse, Price Labs, Beyond Pricing, and they'll get an increase in revenue, 20, 30, 40% sometimes. So they'll advertise this on Wheelhouse or on Price Labs. And I'll tell you that for the average Airbnb host that knows nothing, those numbers are not false. They're advertising a 30% increase in revenue. You should believe it if you've never adjusted your prices on your own in your life. But if you're a host who meticulously looks at the numbers and makes adjustments based on the pricing strategy of this channel, you'll get similar performance. You might get slightly larger performance, but you'll also get some insights that if you're making a mistake on a listing, you might be able to make a key adjustment for years to come that'll actually increase your top line for years to come. Now, we did not talk about one thing, but we will talk about it in a future video, which is that optimal price versus your inflated price. See, you need to put in a price based on some form of metric, and you need to come to a center on what you think your price should be. And so a lot of people have asked me, hey, how do I know what I should charge for my listing? We're gonna cover that in a future video, because you need to do market research, you need to look at your competitors, you need to look at circumstances, and then you'll choose if your nightly rate for a one-bedroom apartment should be 90 or 105 or 150 for a weekday, and then what it should be for a weekend as well. This is the stuff that you'll need to know, and then you'll decide, well, am I friendly to one-night stays and not really need to inflate that? Or am I going to try to get a 3-night stay and I'm going to try to manipulate it with a 3-day discount? These are the kinds of things that you'll need to figure out on your own by doing market research. And so when you plug it all in, something like Wheelhouse or Beyond Pricing can do its job effectively, and you'll know that they're deviating and giving you suggestions based on what's actually a truly optimal number, because they will increase and decrease price for you based on seasonality, but you need to know where you are and where to start. So stay tuned for a future video on market research and finding the price to start with. And thank you so much, guys, for watching this video. If you have questions, please leave it in the comments, and I will leave a link down below. So that way, if you want to sign up for Wheelhouse, which is what we're using currently, you can sign up for it down below. I will be doing deep dive reviews for all 3 major pricing platforms in the future, because like I said, they all do different stuff slightly. Their algorithms are generally the same baseline, but the extra services and features might change your mind on who you want to work with. So of course, thanks again, guys, and I'll see you on the other side.